Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran, and with a brand new method of leveling through islands becoming a lot more popular, I've been seeing a lot more alts showing up here and there on both Horde and Alliance. As someone who utilized this new leveling method to level of my first Alliance character, I got myself a refresher on how to gear my character. And through utilizing all the different features we have in BFA, I decided to combine this video together to tell you guys of every single method, whether you are a solo player or you want to do some group gameplay, in order to gear your character the fastest and the most efficient. I understand a lot of people like to play this game solo, and even though I feel that you're really shooting yourself in the foot when you do, I am going to separate this video into two different sections. The first section, I'll talk about everything you can do by yourself in order to advance the strength of your character, and towards the end of the video we'll talk about other things you can do in a group setting in order to grow your character's item level. So without further ado, let's get into the video. The first thing I feel like you should do is go collect some tokens right now. You can buy tokens with either gold, resources, or honor currency, which can be mailed around as it's account bound. So if you have a main character that does a lot of PvP, maybe a couple battlegrounds on the side, you can take your honor badges and mail them to your tune. You want to get these tokens ahead of time, and as this video goes on, I will mention you the parts of the gameplay where you can use these tokens for a chance to get a bit extra gear, or at worst, it'll give you a little bit extra Azerite. My first recommendation for you would be to check out the auction house. So you are trying to look for one of the DARKMOON fair trinkets, one of the brand new ones for Battle for Azeroth. These trinkets are so good, even my main rogue still uses one to this day. Even though it's only item level 355, it is very powerful and competitive against some of the other trinkets I was running. And for most classes, whether you are a caster, melee, tank, or a healer, those trinkets are going to be a huge boost in item level, as well as an actually effective and useful trinket, whether you want to tank, heal, or DPS in dungeons. So be sure to check out the auction house. The prices for these trinkets are going to differ. I was able to snag my trinket for the casters at about 17,000 gold, which for me wasn't that bad. Your experience is going to vary depending on the economy of your auction house, as well as the size of your server. Being able to snag one of these trinkets early will give you a little bit of a cutting edge ahead of other players when starting off with a fresh new level character. Next is check your calendar, because there could be a possibility for time walking dungeons to be in session. Time walking dungeons are a blessing for any brand new character that got to level 120 in BFA. They are really easy to do, and they can be done at fairly low item level because of the scaling technology. Most of those dungeons will scale you to level 90, 85, 80, depending on the time period that they are time walking for. And the gear you get out of them is actually pretty decent. As you kill bosses, you get around 335 item level pieces of gear, which is amazing for a fresh new character. If you are able to run a couple of these dungeons, you'll get a currency so you can buy 320 item level pieces of gear. And if you get done the quest for the week for the event, like for me it is to run 5 different dungeons of time walking difficulty, you can get a free 355 piece of gear from the brand new raid. It'll be a random piece, could be an Azerite bonus, trinket, or even a weapon, but still a free 355 piece of gear. The next thing on your list should be to check World Quest. World Quest rewards scale with your item level, so the higher your item level, the better the drops will be. There's also potential for you doing World Quest where you are trying to get a gear to Warforge or Titanforge. Let's say you already have level 305 pants and you see a World Quest out there that rewards you 305 plus. That means the piece has a chance to Warforge or Titanforge, and for some players, when you're trying to squeeze out every bit of item level, running World Quest for a chance for a Warforge or Titanforge can sometimes be worth. Overall, World Quest is going to be an efficient way for you guys to do some solo content in order to see if you have a chance for higher item level gear. Next thing, make sure to check your map from time to time, especially once a week, to see if a world boss is available. World boss will require you to join a group, but it's really just a group where multiple players get together in a raid to try to take down a world boss. It's a mishmash of players just kind of throwing their bodies at the boss without any mechanics to learn. Hell, you can actually AFK majority of the time whenever a world boss is available, and you'll still might have a chance at free gear. With world bosses, you can use the tokens that you've gotten at the beginning of this video in order for a chance to re-roll on a piece of gear. Definitely worth if you are a brand new character trying to gear out, because the gear that world bosses gives you is about 355, and especially if you get an Azure bonus piece of gear, it can give you a competitive edge over everybody else. Next thing you should do is get into dungeons. Now, dungeons I don't count as group content, as with the Blizzard LFG feature you can really get into normal and heroics just by yourself. From normals you'll get gear of 315 item level quality or possibility for Warforge and Titan forging. As you grind higher item levels, at item level 310 you'll be able to jump into heroic dungeons, where heroic will give you a base item level of 325, also with a possibility of Warforging and Titan forging. If you're a healer or a tank, then dungeon queues will be pretty quick, as those roles are pretty much sought after. But if you're a DPS, I suggest doing some world quests or finding someone to keep yourself busy while waiting for the dungeon queue. Then we have Warfronts, and Warfronts are special because Blizzard has kind of nerfed them. You need to have 320 item level ahead of time to even queue into a Warfront, and they are only available for your faction once every blue moon. But if they are available, it is a great opportunity for some free gear. Just for running the Warfront the first time, if you get the quest for the Warfront, you get a free 370 piece of gear. The piece of gear is going to be random, however, so it could end up being something as exotic as a weapon or an Azurite piece of gear, but it could be something as simple as belts, boots, and bracers. Also, every single time you run a Warfront, you get a random 340 piece of gear. And I do mean random, as in you might be able to get a pair of pants one time, and then after a few runs you might see that same pair of pants again a couple runs into Warfronts. Outside of Warfronts, you'll also have control over the zone, and the current Warfront we have right now is ARATHI Basin. So once your faction controls ARATHI, or if the opposite faction controls ARATHI, there's a few things you can do in the ARATHI Basin, whether you're Alliance or Horde. If your faction controls the ARATHI Basin Warfront, then you'll have access to a couple quests. Some of these quests reward you with resources, others with Azurite power, and one of them will reward you with a free 340 piece of Azurite gear. Definitely worth doing if you have those available. Outside of that, ARATHI is going to be used for you to farm rares. Those rares all have a chance to drop 340 pieces of gear, but it's a pretty low chance from what I've been able to experience on multiple different characters. There's a lot of rares in ARATHI Basin, and most people will be able to host groups in LFG for you guys to join ARATHI rare farming groups. In those groups, you'll be able to do a circuit and farm and kill every single rare in the map, as long as you have the people to do it. It's fairly quick, fairly easy, and generally the more people you have, the easier the content gets, even though some of the bosses can be soloed, especially if you're a tank or a class with a pet. Once you kill one of those Warfront ARATHI rares, or wherever Warfronts take us in the future, you won't be able to get any kind of rewards out of them until the next contribution cycle. That is where the faction and NPCs swap, so if the Horde is holding control of the area, then Alliance will be controlling, and once it switches control to the other faction, then you can go into ARATHI Basin and farm these rares again. So the reset is about every 2 weeks or so. From there on, as part of the solo content, you will be able to have a chance to jump into LFR raiding. For LFR, you will need item level of 320 to access, very similar to Warfronts. It is technically raiding content, but it is also LFR. Overall, LFR doesn't have the best experience you can have with raiding. It is the watered down version of the content with a bunch of people that don't have any kind of communication except for the instance chat, which sometimes isn't enough in order to learn some of the more difficult mechanics in the fights. Especially with Uldir, I saw a lot of groups wipe on the mother boss multiple times over, as there's opportunities for players to troll the rest of the group and make the experience more or less miserable. So if you are choosing to queue into LFR, you are doing it at your own risk. Definitely wouldn't recommend it if you want to experience the real state of World of Warcraft and real experience of the game. But if you get lucky and if you get into a decent group, it could reward you with some free gear. From here on in the video, we'll be talking about some of the content that you will need a group of players to join with. So you are going to want to join maybe a raiding guild or a PvE or a PvP guild in order to make this happen. If you have some friends who play World of Warcraft, join them together and making some of these groups for group content is going to be recommended as well. So if you're someone who's a solo player, I hope you enjoyed the rest of this video. One of the best parts of the group content, I think, is in the game is the Mythic Plus dungeons. From Mythic 0 versions of dungeons, you'll reward you with 340 pieces of gear, and you can do those only once a week, but the dungeons get very fun and exciting because the content and the mechanics really do start to make sense. From there on, with Mythic Plus dungeons, you can push for higher keys. The higher you go with a Mythic Plus dungeon, the better the gear will be, but the harder the challenges will be. As you push the higher keys for a dungeon from a 2 to a 4 to a 6 to a 8, 7, 9, and even a 10, you'll unlock more affixes to stand between you and the reward at the end. But if you're able to finish the dungeon in time, the faster you do it, the more gear you'll be able to get at the end. Also, at the end of the week, after you do your Mythic Pluses, once the reset day happens, you will be able to loot a piece of gear from your Mythic Plus chest. The higher the difficulty of your most difficult dungeons ran for that week is going to reward you with the highest possible piece of gear, which can be as high as item level 380 at a Mythic Plus level 10. To complete a Mythic Plus level 10 to earn the rewards, you don't even need to do it on time. Just to finish a Mythic Plus dungeon, it will reward you with a piece of gear at the end of the week. While doing Mythic Pluses and Mythic Zeros, you can use a token to reroll for gear. It is generally not that advised, but if you're someone who's a fresh level 120, you are trying to amass as much gear as possible, so it might be worth to reroll on a piece of gear in Mythic Plus dungeons if you are fresh. Then we have the PvP aspect of the game, and the part of PvP I would think a lot of people should go into is arenas. Yes, we have battlegrounds, but battlegrounds have a very RNG sporadic way of gearing, while arenas at least can reward you with a weekly chest similar to Mythic Plus dungeons. Every single match you do in arenas has a chance to reward you gear equal to your rating. For example, as an unranked player, you'll start with 340 pieces of gear, item level 340 that can drop from random dungeons, and a 355 at the very least item level from your weekly cache. There is a bit of RNG with arenas, but if you have a group of friends that you can run, arenas like 2v2s and 3v3s generally last anywhere between a minute and 3 minutes. So they come by very quickly. So you cycle through a lot of them, which gives you a lot more potential for gear. Tokens can be rolled in arenas, but again, it's very RNG, whether you get anything or whatnot. And finally, we have raids, and raids will require for you to have a set group, especially if you want to have a successful raid. It's a lot easier to have a raiding guild or a guild with a raiding group in it. The higher the difficulty of the raid you do, the better the item level of the rewards is going to be. And I feel like that's all I really need to say about raids. They have been a staple in World of Warcraft for a while, so they'll still be the best possible way to get the best gear in the game. Tokens can also be rolled in these raids, and it's probably the best place to use tokens on if you haven't used your tokens up on any other pieces of content. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Hopefully this video gave you guys as many ways to grind out gear, especially in this week where we have time walking available. It is a great way for everybody to get a head start on grinding out the item level, so you can finally get into some of the pieces of content you might want to get into, like raids, dungeons, and warfronts. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I do hope you enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll see all of you guys in another video.